Okay guys, so today I have a new video for you. This is going to be the Millennium version of the deck I've been showing off a lot recently, which is White Forest Azamina Fiendsmith. I'm not going to spend as much time going over the ratios and kind of game theory, so if you're interested in stuff like why I'm playing Sanct for the Fiendsmith package or One a Stellar, etc., then you can look at my channel and look at the recent videos I've put out going into more depth on that. This is going to be more of a gameplay overview. I'll show you a couple lines and then some actual gameplay because it seems like people are more interested in the gameplay now. Okay, just a couple things to mention before we start there. To fit in some of the more Millennium-centric cards, I've had to take out a few cards. So I've taken out Zapper Shrimp, and that means that 95% of the time, the Diabell will be summoning the Silvera, but you should also keep in mind that Arciela is sometimes a better summon off of Diabell, either because you want to use the secret effect, and I say secret because obviously Yu-Gi-Oh players don't read. Illusion and Spellcaster Synchro monsters you control gain 500 attack. Also, they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So, you know, your opponent could be like Raigeki Dark Hole, whatever. That was more popular during 10x format, but you understand what I'm saying. And then you might want to summon this card out. Or if you need hand interactions, like hand interactions are better against your opponent's deck, and so you want to search a Veiler on their turn, or you're playing multiple Veilers and you've searched the Veiler on your turn and you want to search one on their turn, like this could be useful. But usually you're going to be summoning the Silvera. I put in the Gallant Granite because technically the White Forest engine does bridge into the Millennium stuff because the Golem is a rock, and Gallant Granite searches a rock. Usually in my combos I search Nib, which is why it's back in this deck profile, but you can also search for the Golem because it's a rock, and then that gives you the Wedju Temple, which gives you the Sengenjin, and then that gives you another +1 card. I normally would not play the Wedju Temple, because it's kind of like a low value card that is conditional on you having a monster that you place in the spell and trap zone. It's not actually like neg, it's just a kind of an awkward card, but because I can bridge into it, I am opting to play it. Lastly, I'm playing the Chengying here because there are now, I would say, like slightly more convenient ways to go into this, because the Golem is a level 6, and obviously your tuners are 4, but you cannot make Chaos Angel with this because it's an Earth, and the non-tuner for Chaos Angel has to be a light or dark monster. So there are like awkward boards where you have this on field and you don't know what to make. The only other option that like could come up somewhat often is if you were making fusions and XYZs, and you need 2 6s. What'll often happen is you'll have the Golem on field and a Murcielago that you've already used. And there are like decent 6s that you could make, like Wallow, for example. So you could think about playing those instead. I think that if you're on the Black Goat Laughs and the Thrust package, the Chengying is much more likely to have its effect live in your opponent's turn. The Legatia is also a flex spot. I guess the Legatia and the Chengying are flex spots. I think Chengying is highly considerable if you are on Goat. If you're not on Goat, the only way that you can trigger is really off the Wanted Banish, but then that will only be in your turn, not in your opponent's turn, because it's a spell effect. Legatia is just because the Sengenjin is an 8 and your tuners are 4s, so sometimes when you're trying to like force interactions before committing to your full engine, you can summon Legatia to force an interaction because you're gonna pop draw and they have to do something, and then you can, like, you know, start playing with your actual engine. But it's just worth mentioning that, you know, you could consider playing some rank 6s, and I'll show you why you might want to do that in a second here. Okay, so let's move on to a couple lines and then I'll show you actual gameplay. So first of all, what happens if you draw a Sengenjin? So here's kind of like a basic hand, somewhat atypical just because I haven't drawn any non-engine, I guess. So aside from that, you know, nothing's really missing here. So the first and probably the most important use of these cards is if you draw them, similar to if you were to draw Engraver, it means you can go straight into Closed Heaven. So here we summon the Lacrimal, we dump the Engraver, we equip the Requiem to go into the Necrocrypt Princess. Technically, you know, you can also do the Sequence Desiree lines, but I think that the extra deck is too tight to include all of them unless you're willing to cut like the Legatia and the Zapper Shrink and maybe leave in the Chengying, or you keep the Zapper Shrimp and you cut the Chengying and the Legatia, then you could play more of the Fiendsmith stuff. So you could consider that. Those are all options for the extra deck. But here, I'm opting to just play the Wave Hiking. I wanted search for whatever. I send the Wedju Temple, which is basically just a free discard or spell or trap for sending off my other stuff. And so here we bring out Murcielago, we go for Unleashing. Usually I search Unleashing specifically off Murcielago if I'm not interrupted, because the you can get it off of the Sylvie, but the Sylvie usually gets you the tails because that's usually part of the earlier bridge, and the Unleashing like doesn't actually help you get to the rest of your combo. It's just the end piece that you kind of need, but it's very, very important. So you have to make sure that you get this like almost every single time that you play. So if it's the last thing you search, just keep in mind if they've saved an interaction for that, you might not get it. Okay, so Tails resets itself. Now we go for our Cielo, we send the Unleashing, we get the Azamina LZ, which is always part of the ladder for going into Diabel. And sometimes if you're low on spell and trap count and you have to have sent the Unleashing, you set it, but you need to send it again because there's nothing else you can do, then you usually are going to reset the Unleashing when you make Diabel. So you just have to keep that in mind if your spell trap economy is low. Here we search Wanted again. Also, this doesn't come up all of the time, but because of this card, I've mentioned this in a previous video, it's much easier to get Hallowed back to your hand with its once per turn effect, where you can shuffle an Azamina card from your grave or field back into the deck to get this in hand. You can leave the Murcielago on field, or if you couldn't make it because you needed to go for the Ilia Sylvia, you're obviously not going to give your Omni Negate up to get back a Hallowed in hand. So you don't have to worry about using this once per turn effect to get it back into your hand, as long as you've used Azamina LZ for the ladder. Okay, so now I just go for a Little Knight, but this is a placeholder link too, just to show you for the line that you can make whatever if you're playing Rabbit or whatever here. So now we Howl it back to hand, and I summon the Ilia Sylvia, and that's basically a basic end board there where you're getting this just because you've drawn one of the Millennium cards. Okay, the last thing that I'll show you is when you would want to go for Chengying. So either if you're playing into a board, or you're playing on the crackback and you have Wanted access, which is searchable, that means you can trigger the Chengying on your turn. But if you're setting up a board, you need the Goat. So usually you're going to hard draw the Goat, which I'm playing at 3, or you'll thrust into the Goat. And then you have a way that you can make Chengying live whenever you want on your opponent's turn. So yeah, here I'm just playing and searching for my spells so I can bring out the Murcielago, which almost always gets me the Unleashing. And then I bring out the Rusia, so I get back the Unleashing here. I summon the Esteller. Esteller gives me another body so that I can go for the Gallant Granite and search for the rock. This is not like particularly important in this line because you could have also searched a Nib here, but I'm just showing that, you know, it's whatever rock monster, whether or not you use it. Like you could use this here, and this would be an example of where having another rank 6 could be important because you already have access to the full Fiendsmith line here. So like, you know, you could have the Wave High King, or you could have the Sequence or whatever, and then you would have 2 level 6s that could go into a Wallow or whatever the other thing is, or like if you're cracking boards, the Virtual World Fan, which is like the double banish type of stuff, or like even the M7. So there are many options here. I'm not sure if M7 is as valuable because you're not playing a heavy hand trap build, so it's not like you're going to be adding back a ton of useful things all the time. Anyhow, so Lacrima, dumps Engraver, equip for Necroquip, bring out Engraver, go into Wave High King, Rusia comes out, now we make the Chengying here. So in this case, the Murcielago is a very important material for the Chengying. You obviously can make Chaos Angel even going first to protect your Synchros, but because your interactions are so layered, I don't think that you need to go so all in into needing the protection from the Chaos Angel, like especially Light and Dark. Maybe if you were ending on a Masquerena or a Little Knight, the Chaos Angel would be a little bit more important to protect your board, but I feel like you have enough layers with the Unleashing, the Searched Veiler, and the Searched Rock, which could be the Nibiru, that you don't actually need to make the Chaos Angel there. Okay, so now let me show you some actual gameplay. This is against, I guess, like a lot of next format meta. So here's I forget what the name of the deck is called, the new Reptile deck that people are playing with Ryzeal. Also, there are some like interactions in here. So here we summon the Sengenjin. One of the cool things about this, if you're in a locals and people don't know what you're on, if you're in a larger tournament, most people will assume you're playing the actual Millennium deck because that deck is actually legit. So they may interact with this card because this is like the best card of their searchers, maybe besides the Blue Eyes one, the Heart of Blue Eyes. So here he does Ash on this, which from his perspective is maybe not stupid because he thinks we're on Millennium, but from our perspective, this really doesn't matter because this is just the free Fiendsmith stuff. But if we trade 1-for-1 with an interaction and this is still a spell or trap that we can send, it's slightly better than a 1-for-1 for us. Okay, so here we chain the Wanted to the Hallowed and we bring out the Murcielago, and now he uses his second interaction here. It's hard to say from his perspective whether this is a good idea or not, because he could be thinking like, okay, if this gets ashed and we're on an Azamina engine, this might be the thing that we need to search something else, and searching the Witch doesn't help us, like it's a useless card because we already had access to the Hallowed Azamina, so it's not like we need the Deception to fuse. So, you know, from his perspective, I guess it's debatable whether or not that's a good idea. But for us, we care that this is an illusion or a spellcaster monster because the tails that we've drawn is live. So we really just wanted a way to make the tails live. So here I tails and I search for the LZ. Now that we know that we have an LZ and we have a material that we can send off the LZ, now I can decide to go for my witch play. So here we witch, we activate Deception, and now the Murcielago that's soaked in interaction can be sent back to the extra deck to add back our Hallowed. And now we can use the Deception to bring out the Ilia Sylvia. So now we have an Omni Negate. So this is why whenever I go through the gameplay videos, I try to show that you don't need to make an Omni Negate or a Negate early. You need to do things that will force your opponent to interact with you, otherwise they're going to suffer because your card economy will outpace theirs. So when you soak an interaction on the Sengenjin, which also confuses them because why would they think you're playing White Forest, and then you soak an interaction on the Murcielago, now you could say, okay, the LZ has to resolve or I'm screwed. So that means this is now the appropriate time. You've identified that you want the Omni Negate for this, and then you are LZing after you have the Omni Negate, because this if you don't ladder, you're probably going to lose. You don't have enough. Okay, so now the LZ search for the Sylvie because you didn't normal summon yet. Here I search for the Unleashing because I've hard drawn the tails and there's no other target for the Sylvie. But and also I've already used the Murcielago search effect this turn. So if I identify Unleashing as a core piece of the end board that I want every single turn, even if I had like a Woes in my deck that I could search off this, I would probably choose to get the Unleashing anyhow because the Murcielago is dead. Okay, so here we go for the Arciela. I send the Unleashing and I search for the Azamina LZ. The Unleashing resets itself. Here I special, and here I look for the draw because I'm thinking that based on what I draw, I might choose to add back something different. Because I already have the Ilia Sylvia on field, it's not like I need to add back the Hallowed Azamina specifically in case I draw like another Wanted, or I redraw the Deception that I would shuffle back off of Wanted. There's not really a use for Hallowed at this time because I've gone through the Murcielago effect and now the Ilia Sylvia is on field. So because the only other Azamina monster I'd have in the extra deck is Sol, but there's obviously nothing to pop, so I would never be summoning that. So that's why I'm checking to see what I draw first before I decide what I'm going to add back. Okay, so here I search for a Deception, I think, and I add back the tails. So normally the tails is like one of the highest value add backs you can have, because you want to send it as cost for the Diabel on their turn because it's free, and then it's gas for the crackback. So if I have a choice, I will always add back the tails, but sometimes, you know, like I've already used the Hallowed add back effect and I need to add it back off Diabel or whatever, and I have some other like Sinful Spoils card to send off of it to continue playing. Okay, so now I use my bodies to go into the Fiendsmith stuff, and I go Necroquip and Engraver, and I go for the Wave Hiking. So now, so yeah, he ashed and he impermed, and now he summons the this is the level 4 one, where if it's summoned or tributed, you can add a Mitsurugi spell or trap from your deck to your hand. I'm thinking that because he's on a deck that has effects that special summons, I will probably win just off of the Wave Hiking Caesar. And so there's no reason for me to Omni Negate because this can't run over the Omni Negate, and I want to save the Omni for anything that threatens the Caesar or anything the Caesar can't deal with. So here he searches the prayers. So this one, when you activate it, optionally you can also tribute a reptile, and then you can add, but you can also special. So the moment I see that it specials, I'm like, okay, well, we're obviously going to Wave Hiking that. Then he activates this one, which is another summoning effect. So I obviously Wave Hiking that too. So I still have my Omni, and now he goes for Typhon. Because it's like, he had one card left in hand, which makes the Omni, you know, feel much more valuable, because it's harder for him to play around. So now he's going to go for Typhon and try to run over, and then we can just Unleashing and bounce that. So yeah, that was the Mitsurugi one. Crystron is another meta deck from the upcoming format, like at least based on what we see in the OCG. So I'm also showing against that here. So here we have a Sylvie, and we're going into an LZ where we can reset the tails here. We also have the Golem, and in this case, like, I think that maybe I didn't play this correctly, because I think that I should be Goleming first to go into the Fiendsmith plays to either force interactions, or if they don't have any, I'll just have the Wave Hiking and then I'll continue playing. And I think the reason that I didn't start with it is because I wasn't sure what to place, but I think that was a mistake. I shouldn't be putting my gas on the board first. The only reason that I did put the gas on the board first is because I knew that I could I could use the Azamina LZ after my normal was used, like if my board got blown out, and then I could still special the Rusia and maybe ladder that way. But, you know, anyhow. Like, the whole point of having, like, sub-engines like this in the deck is that your main engines are insulated in some way, so that's why I'm mentioning that. So here he goes, Chainlink 2 Imperm on my Arciela. Because I already have gas in my hand, and I have specifically the Azamina LZ that will make me go into Diabel, I don't want to bounce my Arciela to get Sylvie out just to dodge the Imperm, because it's like, what, I'm going to search the Unleashing or the Veiler? Like, I don't need that. Like, this is going to give me Wanted, which is going to give me Witch, which will give me Deception, which will give me a Hallowed, which will give me Murcielago, which will give me Unleashing. So I don't need the Unleashing here. So I'm like, okay, use the Imperm, that's fine. So now we summon Azamina LZ. And we get our Wanted search, and we add back the Tails, which, as I always say, is like one of the highest value add backs, because it's free as a send on their turn. So now we Wanted, we get the Witch, and we send the LZ, because we've already used LZ, and I think at this point that he's probably not going to be able to stop me after using 2 of his interruptions. So here we have Deception Tributes, we get the Hallowed, go Murcielago, and that searches for the Unleashing. Here's another example of where you could go for a rank 6. The reason that I think that it's not core is because, like, okay, we don't go for a rank 6. Let's say we have nothing else to play in our hand and we're just setting the Unleashing. You can still just turn these 2 cards into Closed Heaven to do the Fiendsmith line, right? And then you have your Unleashing set, and the Murcielago is engraved, contributing towards your Unleashing count for what you're bouncing. So yeah, anyhow, I add back the Hallowed just to have the resource in hand, because it's once per turn. There's no reason not to add it back. And I go for the Fiendsmith line as I was describing. Here, I haven't used Unleashing to reset, so I think that there's no reason not to get the draw off of Rusia, although I guess technically I could have held this in my hand. I shuffle back the Arciela to bring out the Sylvie to go, I think, for the Gallant Granite, because now I'm like, okay, well, he's shown that he has no more interactions. Why would I not add another layer to my hand, and I'll search the Nib there? And the Nib also works with the Droplet, so it's not like I'm, you know, messing myself up. And we don't care if we have to Nib ourselves at some point, because these are just resources in the grave to get our tuners back out again. Yeah, so I set the Droplet. I have the Azamina Unleashing set. The Deception is reset, so we have lots of fodder for Droplet. And now my opponent has to play. So now I'm like, okay, he's playing the Crystron stuff, and he's searching for whatever. And I don't really know. I haven't looked at any of the new support for this yet, to be honest, but I know that they have lots of effects that special summon. So again, I feel like Wave High King is going to be a very high value card, and I really just want to use this and protect this card. So I Wave High King there, and then he basically just scoops. Okay, another meta deck from next format. This is based on whenever we get the Blue Eyes deck here in the TCG. So this is a very awkward hand for me. I've drawn the Brick in Hallowed without the Unbrick card in a, you know, like a Wanted or something. And I haven't drawn access to any of my White Forest engine. So it's, you know, if my opponent can fully play and if I don't draw into a non-engine card, it's looking like an unwinnable game for me. And so here I draw, unfortunately, a Sengenjin for turn. So this is a very, very low probability hand, because this is a 1-of in Golem, it's a 1-of in Hallowed, it's 2 3-ofs in the Sengenjin, and then another 1-of in the Witch. So yeah, I'm like, okay, what, maybe I can, my entire strategy here is, so this card reads, if this face-up card is sent from the spell and trap zone to the graveyard, destroy all monsters you control. So I'm thinking maybe my don't lose condition is that I can bait out as much as possible and then finally end on an SP that actually no, this has to go to the graveyard, so that wouldn't even work. So actually I don't really know what my win condition is here. So here I activate Engraver. Because I'm on the Sanct package, remember that I have to use Sanct before I put a monster on board. He uses Ash, so now I Golem. The thing about drawing both Golem and Sengenjin is that this is probably like the least bad value for Wedju, because you can Wedju the Golem, and then you're still getting the search off of Golem anyhow, and you were already going to use the Golem effect. But here he interacts with the Temple, so I use the Golem, I special the Golem. It's not high enough to run over anything of value over here, and it doesn't have anything useful to search. So I pitch the draw, or the search with the Witch, and he Veilers here, which is a very good Veiler, because, you know, at this point, like, I've shown enough of the cards in my hand without having used any non-engine or breakers against his board that I probably don't have ways to use non-engine to interact with him. I would have Talanced already at this point. So now I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to desperately try to go for the Fiendsmith stuff, but he Veilers the Lacrima, which means that it's very hard to continue fueling my grave, and I just have the 1 Engraver. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can summon the Engraver and do like a Chaos Angel play, but that doesn't play around the Ultimate Spirit Dragon. So yeah, and then he drill beams to banish the Sengenjin, which I was going to use as a material with the Necroquip to go into a Little Knight, but as I show that this has to go to the grave, so the Little Knight wouldn't have helped me, so I lose there and I scoop. For the last game, I'll show against the strange Invoked Shadal deck. This is something that I've been thinking about, and Azamina too, sorry. This is something I've been thinking about testing myself, because the invoked cards are still extremely strong, like both in simplified game states with Mechaba, or they have like really good floodgates like this card. So Caliga requires Alistair and a Dark. So each player can only attempt to activate one monster effect per turn, and each player can only attack with one monster during each battle phase. So if you are not familiar with the Invoked deck, the typical lock with this is you'd have Caliga and you'd have Mechaba, and Mechaba is a negate. And so whatever the one monster effect you tried to use was, you could negate that, and then if they tried to attack you, they'd have the Alistair for the attack boost. So yeah, he doesn't have the Mechaba on field, but he does have an Omni negate. So instead of the Mechaba, he's using an Omni negate in the Ilia Sylvia, and then he has the Caliga on field. So I look at my hand and I think, okay, to play, I must get rid of the Caliga, and I need to do it in a way that doesn't use the that doesn't lose the Ilia Sylvia. So I decide that I'm first going to Deception, and I'm going to search for Hallowed and see if he interacts with it here, because this does not use my monster effect. So I tribute one of my doubles, because I have two of these, and the Ilia Sylvia now goes to the grave. So he's also used his only monster effect that he's allowed to use right now. So now I normal summon the Azamina Alzette, because if I use this effect to special itself or the Esteller, I can't use any other effects. So I want to summon this so that I can use the effect to fuse, and then I can special something else. The reason that I choose Ilia Sylvia is because now that I've used the effect to fuse, I am no longer allowed to use monster effects. So I'm thinking that I just need something that is big enough to run over the Caliga, and then it's an Omni negate. Like I couldn't summon Sol and get the pop because I've used my monster effect. I couldn't use Murcielago effect to search because I've used my monster effect. So then I go, before I go battle, just in case, like something happens and I have to use my Omni, I do need to use Tails while I have an Illusion or Spellcaster on field. So I use the Tails and I search for the Alzette, which I know that I have a material for here in the Deception. I run over the Caliga. I use Deception's secret effect to burn for 15, gain 15. And then I'm trying to go main phase 2, and then he scoops, because basically what's going to happen here is now that I've Tailsed for the Alzette, even if it does anything here that requires me to use the Omni, then I can Engraver and get Deception, because my field will be clear, do the entire Fiendsmith line there against a deck that uses a bunch of fusion summon effects, and then I still have my entire ladder with the Alzette. So yeah, there's I think that's the last game I have to show you. So some final thoughts on this right now. I think that the toy version is probably better than this, but I know that a lot of people like these cards. The thing where this has the edge over the toy cards is that if you just draw a soldier, you never want to normal summon that. If you draw a soldier, you want to set the soldier and send it off of something. Whereas the Sengenjin, and I guess to a slightly less effective degree, the Golem and the Wedju Temple, all immediately are Fiendsmith by themselves. Any Fiendsmith play you want to go for, these cards by themselves are that. So they're very, very good at forcing interactions. In weird game states, this having a high attack can matter, where you can force something in battle phase first before you commit to the rest of your engine. And then there are some niche advantages, like being able to play a Centurion Legatia, although I wouldn't say this is like a major selling point of the deck. Yeah, Granite, I guess, is worth considering if you're on the rock, and that's basically everything for this version of the deck. So yeah, I'm probably going to cover more different variants after this. If you have any feedback, let me know. If you want to join the Discord or subscribe, then do. Thank you.